Okay, this is part 2 of the animation helper, and this is a script. And again, you can use it and distribute it with your games with no runtime license whatsoever, but please don't give away the source code. I like to have my lunch money. This is the animation helper, and it ties into the player control, which might be null because you can use the animation without the player control. And the things we talked about. And for every animation, it has a potential of moving in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus up and down stairs. Those are the basic animation directions that are built into this. Like I said, it's editable, you can add. And these are the currently supported animation things you can do. You can add and delete from this list. If the data gets serialized, it's not stored anywhere by my game. So the order of these is not relevant to any stored data. So you can correctly put them alphabetical, which will probably be by the time you see the video on that one. And so many variables that we talked about that were in the inspector. And for each of the animation actions, and there are 8, 9, 10, 12 different possible animation directions, there's a variable. So if you add one up to the enumeration above, just add a corresponding one here. I made them the same name so that it made a lot more sense when reading the code. I used to put, when I do C++, I put an underscore T like I did for not yet here, but I wanted to use these as words, right, in the dot string. So I took off the dot T except for, not set or something. One. Awake, I add all of the animations to an all list so I can search for any one name that I'm given by name or by enumerated value. So if you do add one, also add it here. The order that you add them doesn't matter. It just goes through the list. There's not that many. Here is, I call the player control, or I register for the player control delegate, and it calls me when the player is on the ground, and I set a local variable. This is some debug code which I have commented out. It's up above there somewhere where I use it. Go to Start, Object, Facing Info, Object, Moving Info in the default state. Play animation by enumerated type. Wherever it is at, whichever direction is facing or moving, which is these two variables which are updated as it happens, go to the new state, new animation. I used to say animation state, but that got kind of a long variable. Here's the planet animation where you give it the state and you tell it the facing and player directions, which can be useful for an NPC, and then it goes to state. Same thing here, right? It's the same one. You just whether or not you pass in what you're going to use or not. And then go to state updates these at runtime. I might remove it from here, but there was one condition and needed it. Maybe it was just debugging, but I don't want to just change the code and break things and have to figure out what I did. So it may be slightly different when you see it. So calculate their moving direction, calculate their facing direction, and update these ref variables. Get their velocity, then basically switch to the animation state, and then go to that one. And the reason that I do it this way is that way I can say, you can do it by any way you need to, get there from here. And they all have similar, but some have different call signatures. Here on enable, I register myself for all of the possible events. On disable, I unregister for all the possible events. The update loop's pretty simple. I get the current animation that's supposed to be run. I make sure it's running. If it is running, I don't do anything. The player is on the ground and the distance has changed. And the test animation, like earlier, see here we'll go to idle state if they haven't done anything. But if that check animation state button was done on player control or animation control, then it doesn't go to the idle state. That's what the test is for. You can press test and it doesn't say, oh, wait a minute, let's go back to idle. and more of these. This is the big go-to script that just maps one to the other. And these are spread out all over based on however I wrote them, but they may be maybe when you see it, they'll be in alphabetical order, which is typically how I release code, but maybe not, because this is working. Don't touch what works. Start animation is a public method in AnimationHelper where you can pass it an animation name from the animator. And that way, if you have an off one, like, itch your left ear or something one, and I don't want to, and you don't want to add it, then you can just call it by name and it does it. When you're doing perfect animations, there's transitions, but this is kind of a beginner's kit, so it jumps to the animation. It may or may not do a transition, but generally it's just going to jump to it. So that's the end of this video.